Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Since we are doing a legal panel, making sure that everybody sees that the session is being recorded. Hopefully you all give consent. If you do not, please turn off your cameras. My name's Justin. I'm a staff member here with the Office of Alumni Engagement at Cal State Fullerton. Happy to be with you this evening. I'd like to thank you all personally for joining us tonight. I'd also like to thank our moderators and our panelists for spending their Friday night here with us in their very, very, very busy lives. Before we get started, I do want to provide just a few reminders and some Zoom tips. First, as I mentioned, tonight's session is being recorded. If you would prefer not to appear in the recording, you may turn off your camera by clicking the Stop Video button on the left side of the toolbar on your screen. Next, you've also all been muted as you entered the room. This is to help cut down on any background noise that we may have. We ask that you stay muted during the panel so that it's easier to hear their insights. If you do have a question, you may enter it in the chat box by clicking the chat button in your toolbar, or you can ask your question out loud by virtually raising your hand. To do that, click the participants button and then look for the blue raise hand button on the right. I'll help by turning the call on you, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Once we get started, you will see your panelist videos larger on your screen. If you would prefer to see everyone in the room, click view in the upper right corner of your screen, and you can switch back and forth between those views at any time. With all of that out of the way, I will now turn it over to tonight's host, Sydney Francois, Cal State Fullerton class of 2018 and a member of the Alumni Association Board of Directors, and Professor Gwendolyn Alexis from African American Studies.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm excited to get started and hear some of our panelists share some useful information with everyone this evening. Professor Alexis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm Professor Gwen Alexis. I teach in the African American Studies Department at CSUF and the History Department at John Jay College for Criminal Justice in New York City. So I hope I'm having some of my John Jay students here. That would be cool. So I'm very excited that you're all here, and this is really awesome.
So we're going to go ahead and let our panelists go through. We're going to start with Tara Cowell, followed by Rebecca Thomas, and then Hane Udenka.
Hi, my name's Tara, and I went to Cal State Fullerton and graduated in '96 with an African American Studies degree. And I reached out a few months ago to Professor and said, you know, what can I do to help? And she thought this panel might be a good opportunity. So I wanted to kind of talk about my experience becoming a lawyer. And I also recognize that I've been a lawyer for 20 years, and I might not have great advice for you on what to do right now. So I have some wonderful colleagues that have also joined me that will be talking soon. So how I got to law school was really, I wasn't planning to be a lawyer. Some people, I think, start in first grade and think they're going to be a lawyer. But I went to law school or I went to undergrad, and the second year in school, I became pregnant, and that was fine. I was able to continue going to school with my daughter. But then when it became close to graduating, I was sort of in a position of, how am I going to be able to take care of her for the rest of my life? And teaching was on one hand, and a lawyer was on the other hand. And I sort of thought I could always teach being a lawyer, but I couldn't be a lawyer if I only went to, school to become a teacher. So that sort of drove me down a path, and I went to law school at the University of San Francisco, and I was there from 96 to 99. And my daughter was 3 to 5 when I was there. And we'll all kind of talk about our experiences. I didn't have a financial issue being there, but I was there alone with my daughter and raising her myself. There was probably the second or third year, there were some classes that were from 6 to 9 o'clock at night. And I found myself, not found myself, but I brought her to school and we sat in the back and she played with her dolls underneath the bench quietly and didn't bother anybody. Occasionally a professor said, we have a guest in the room or something like that, but otherwise they didn't seem to mind it. But then I came back and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney, but my criminal law professor didn't like that. So I wasn't sure if it was because I had a young daughter or what. That sort of seemed like he felt like that was a dangerous profession to get involved in. And so that kind of shied me away from that. But in the end, I knew a lot of people in healthcare, and that's where I ended up going. So I have been a healthcare attorney for 20 years. I have never worked in a law firm, other than I have my own firm now. So it's just me. But so I don't have the experience with a law firm. My two friends here have work and do work in a law firm, so they can share that experience. But I have worked for hospitals, primarily nonprofits, for a very long time. And I have enjoyed that work because it's allowed me to help people. I was able to work with some other nonprofit centers like the Public Law Center and creating facilities where people could come into the clinics in our near our hospitals or with our hospitals and provide free legal services to patients who have legal issues. So it provided a great opportunity for me to help out the community. So that's sort of how I got to where I am today. And I'll just turn it over now to Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. So my name is Rebecca Thomas. I am an attorney in Orange County. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised there. I left Georgia though, and originally went to college in Virginia at Hampton University. Did not like it and left after one semester, and then transferred to a college in Ohio randomly. Don't know how I ended up in the Midwest, but I did. Probably because they gave me some more money. And I have an economics degree from Ohio Dominican University. I graduated in 2010. And then I knew I wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 11. Probably before that, because I used to negotiate my discipline in about 2 or 3. I would negotiate out of certain types of discipline that are acceptable in the South. I used to negotiate those. So I think I probably knew before, but so I knew I wanted to be a lawyer after undergrad, but I kind of made a swift change to move back to Atlanta instead of going to DC, which was my plan, because my father was sick. So I just went back to Atlanta and I said, well, what should I do? So they used to have a lot of programs to teach between, after you finish college. So I did that. It was like a Teach for America program, AmeriCorps program. And I taught in inner city schools in Atlanta it was supposed to be 2 years, but it wasn't, because it was very hard and kind of heart-wrenching. So I stopped and said, if I don't start law school now, I never will. And I also identified some issues that I saw in the education system that I was determined to fix. So I went ahead and started law school in Atlanta. I originally started at Atlanta John Marshall Law School because I just was like, let me just start. And then I started there and transferred to Emory University in 2013. and graduated in 2015 from Emory University in Atlanta. And I got married right before I graduated and somehow ended in California. My husband was already working out here and we didn't want to both look for jobs. So here I am, took the bar. I graduated in December, took the bar in February 2016. And I passed the bar and I got a fellowship with, at the time it was called the Legal Aid Society of Orange County. The name has since changed to Community Legal Aid SoCal, I think is the new name. It's fancy nowadays. So I had a fellowship with them because I learned how to network early in life and had randomly called up someone in the parking lot and said, I want to do education law in California. I don't know anyone. Will you talk to me? And it was actually the night of my wedding because I was like, I guess I'm actually going to California now. I should know a person or two. And so I knew I wanted to do education. I got on Google, said, where can I find education lawyers? Found one, and they happened to answer the phone. And they are a colleague and has opened many doors for me till this day. So she said, meet me at Legal Aid when you get here. And I did. And I followed up with her and I worked there for the summer when I came out. And when I graduated, they found a job for me as a fellow. And so I worked as a fellow for a year in a program for victims of violence. And because I had already passed the bar, I was doing a lot of the lawyer work, but nobody told me about the moral character and how long it took. So I had to wait a little bit to be admitted. So after that, I became a staff attorney at Legal Aid, stayed at Legal Aid for 3 years. And it was a great experience. I wanted to become a lawyer to help people and to change my community from the inner city of Atlanta, know what it's like to be poor and to not have money for law school. I didn't have any money for law school. I almost didn't get to stay in law school because I had no money and couldn't get the financial aid because it was credit-based and I didn't have great credit. So my school was like, you should be here. And they somehow gave me money to pay off debt so that I could get so they could give me money for law school because they thought I should be there. So I wanted to help people after law school and I did that at Legal Aid and I try to still do. I then had a daughter after working there and I was doing litigation. I worked in family law and still in domestic violence for about 1.5 years and then just transitioned to family law. But it was a lot of litigation and I had a small child then and I wanted to kind of work part-time a little bit because I kind of really get involved. So I left to go and work part-time and ended up not working part-time because I couldn't stop working. But I found a small firm. So now I'm at a small firm that has very great family life balance. As I am in the hospital room right now. I'm pregnant with my second child. So, that's what I've been doing. Now I practice a little bit of family law, but real estate and landlord-tenant. So COVID has been very interesting with landlord-tenant laws, and I have been in the throes of that, and that's been interesting. But I'm very excited to answer questions about law school. I think, and whether or not to go, I think that it is a great choice to be thinking about. I think trying to figure out your path is a great choice because not many people do that first. They just want to have the title of attorney because it sounds prestigious. But it comes with more than prestige. It comes with a lot of dedication and other things. So I'm excited to be on the panel. It's a little bit of my history, and I'm excited to answer you guys' questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hania Udenka. I and Rebecca both sit on the board of the Thurgood Marshall Bar Association here in Orange County. And my path to becoming a lawyer and law school is actually kind of unconventional a little bit because I am not a United States citizen and I didn't grow up here. I'm Nigerian and Iranian, and I grew up in Nigeria predominantly. And I went to college in Cyprus, which is, as most people know, it's an island. I know there's a Cyprus in California, so people get confused. but it's a country in the Mediterranean between Turkey and Greece. And I went to the Eastern Mediterranean University there. I studied international relations because when I went to college, I thought that I would go into politics or I would work in development. I wanted to do something political science related and maybe work with an NGO, maybe the United Nations. Nigeria and Iran are both countries that could use a lot of development. And so I thought that I would help with nation building. And so about 3 years into international relations, I realized that that was not for me, and better people are doing that work because I didn't have the heart for it, and I didn't have the heart for the disappointment that comes with development work. And I had an international law professor who his family had been impacted by the Cyprus conflict, which took place in 1970 and had to do with Greece and Turkey fighting over the Cyprus island, and his parents were killed in that conflict. And so he decided to become an international lawyer. And he and I spoke at length after classes every day about, what does nation building mean? And, all these questions. And he told me, he said, you should go and be a lawyer. That's what you're made for. You're made for argument. You're made for debate. You should do international law. And so I didn't know what I was doing after graduation because I knew I didn't want to do development work. And I started looking at law school. And my family lives all over the world, but I had a lot of my immediate family living in California. And so I thought, okay, I would move to the US and I would go to law school. So I applied and I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money for college either. I actually ended up in Cyprus on a scholarship, which is how I ended up there. And so I started applying, and I didn't qualify for financial aid either. And so I applied and, got admission to a number of schools and ended up at UC Irvine because I was just blown away by the professors that I interviewed with, their scholarship, their kindness, and how nice they were, and just the culture of the school. They have, just a very strong emphasis on, not just being an attorney, but the kind of attorney that you are and the way, the integrity, ethics, and sort of civility that you hold yourself to. And that culture permeates the law school. And so they call it sort of like, so UCI, they want it to be synonymous with kindness. And so it was a breath of fresh air to me. And so I packed up my bags and moved to the US, to Irvine. And I loved being in law school. I knew as soon as I started law school that I would have to work at a law firm. And all of my sort of public interests I would have to balance with working at a law firm, because when you're an international student, there are very few employers who can afford to sponsor your H-1B visa, is what it's called. And so from the time that I was a first-year student, my first summer, I was at a big law firm in San Francisco. And in my second year, I summered at the law firm that I currently practice at. And I sort of looked for law firms who had a true emphasis on public interest as opposed to a stated interest, because a lot of firms will say that they care. So it was something that was really important to me to, as a summer, sort of work at a law firm where we were sort of handling our regular caseload, but incorporated in that was also an emphasis on pro bono and free legal services. That's how I ended up in my current firm. My practice, it's a big law firm, which essentially is synonymous with full service law firm, which means that we do everything. And I'm currently still a general practitioner, which means that I do a lot of private civil litigation and commercial litigation, which is sort of business litigation. And that essentially means that, like company A is suing company B on some money dispute or trademark dispute. And then I also do business bankruptcies, which is essentially Chapter 11 restructuring, trying to help companies that are in distress sort of figure out what their debts and obligations are, restructure that so that they can emerge successful and viable and able to compete in the marketplace. And finally, I work on sort of cases involving the government. So criminal law, indictment cases, or what we consider criminal law, but also compliance, investigations, regulatory enforcement, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's pretty much my little history. I'm very excited to be here and to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was wonderful. We can open up the chat to questions, or if you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a general question or one for one of the panelists in particular.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So far, this has been amazing. So thank you for being here. So I am a CSUF alumnus, and I am older. I am a mom, but I'm an older mom. I'm in my 40s, and I am considering law school for reasons that have to do with family preservation, in terms of there are some things that I'm interested in protecting, and how to get an estate and how to turn, our family property into, build a library on top of it and things like that. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of family preservation and just leaving a legacy. But then I also have other interests in terms of IP in general, just, copyright law. And I think overall, the main theme is protection, is protection and like ultimate ownership. So whoever wants to take this question, in regards to me being a 40-something mother, having the nerve to consider law school, do you have any feedback or insight as to what that may look like? And I would be probably working full time, so I wouldn't be able to just be a full-time student as well.
Yeah, this is Tara. So just a little more about me, sorry, really quick, is I'm also a grandma from my first child, but I also am a late mother too. So I have two kids in my 40s, that I had in my 40s. So now I'm not going back to law school, mind you, but I was a super young mom, and now I'm a super old mom. That's what they call me. My son calls me grandma hair, which is fine because I am a grandma. But what I would say is, you should look for some opportunities. My friends will have to speak about today what they know, but I know Southwestern Law School had some opportunities that were really appropriate for full-time workers. So I would say to look for those. I felt like when I went to law school, everybody said you have to go to the top whatever, or you have to be in the top whatever, or you have to be in this great law school. But if it's not a good fit for you and your life, then it's not going to work anyway. Or if you're going to be in so much agony when you're going through it, that it may not be worth it. And it's true that I even see jobs today, not that I'm looking for a job, but they say, oh, must have gone to the top 10% law school. And I think, you want somebody with 10 years experience, and they have to, do you want to know, was my law school where it is today or where it was 10 years ago? That to me seems irrelevant once you have experience. And I think part of, what my friends here said today, a big focus is going to be on networking, which I know you do well, but that's where you're going to be able to get jobs in your future, is to build your network as you continue to move through life. But I wouldn't ever, I think it's a good opportunity if you think you can put your ducks together. But I would try to look for a school that matches you, not a school that has some fancy name. So that's my advice.
I just want to say, so I'm relatively, well, not now, but when I was in law school, I went straight through from undergrad. And so I was a relatively young law school student. I was fortunate enough to go to UCI, where they have a big emphasis on class. I don't want to use the word diversity, but the classes are very reflective of society. And so there were a lot of students that were older, and I was the youngest in my class. And there were a lot of people, my best friends right now, for whom the law was a second career. And, you know, I had classmates who were professors. I had classmates who spent an entire, career in social services. I had classmates who worked in the circus swallowing swords. I had classmates who were sailors. My best friend was in the military for 10 years. And so I don't think the age component alone should dissuade you from going to law school. I have my best friends in law school were parents. And so just picking up on that particular specific piece, it is not, out of this world to go to school and have it be a second career. There'll be a lot of people in your class who are in the same position, and it's not going to be unusual at all. There are a lot of people who are entering the workforce who will be exactly in the same position as you. And so that shouldn't be the determining factor at all.
I'll just add just this little piece because I wasn't a mom when I started law school. I did pick a school where majority of the students were either older or second career, because again, I went last minute and I was just like, let me just go. But what it turned into was kind of what Tara was saying. It was one of those schools where most people who came there because they knew what they wanted to do, and it wasn't about the name. They came because they were like, I am going to be doing this, I can get to where I need to be, or, whatever it was. But with that being said, I'll just say this. Life doesn't stop when you're. Can you guys hear me? You can hear me now? Sorry, my hand was over my phone. Life doesn't stop when you're in law school. So there are a few things. It is going to be hard. So I would make sure that, I know you said you're going for your own personal reasons, make sure that those reasons why you're going outweigh the sacrifices that you're going to make, and that it is worth it for you to, and that everything that is going to get you through law school will be enough to do that. So, like, do you have the money? A lot of things that we can't necessarily answer for you, but I would just give you to think about. Number one, life doesn't stop, right? Like, they're going to expect you to do the work and all of that. But then two, your life is literally not going to stop. My dad died the first 2 weeks before finals, my first or second semester of law school. Literally. I was like crying in oral arguments because literally my dad passed away during law school. Second year, my mom had a mental breakdown in law school. So she had to come live with me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, life just doesn't stop. And I also had no money. So I had to work during law school. So it just doesn't stop. So make sure that either you have the support you need, you have the money you need, because I still have to pay bills. So, so you just have to make sure that it works for you. And that it's not just, I'll just take out all the loans. If you're okay with that, then yes, but just make sure that it works for you and you're not just doing it because you're like, oh, well, what else? I want to learn these things, because you can learn those things without becoming a lawyer. You can learn how to build family wealth. You can learn how to protect your legacy. You can learn how to do all of that stuff and not spend the money, time, and energy to be a lawyer, because after you do law school, you might not, the bar is going to be hard. You know what I mean? So you don't just do it to learn the material. Unless you just want to go to law school to learn, and that's okay. But being a lawyer is separate than learning those skills and those things you want to learn. So I would just weigh all of that, because law school it's a whole situation. I didn't love it like Hania did. I didn't. She was like, I loved law school. I made it through law school because I had a goal, right? But I just, everybody wants to, a lot of people want to be a lawyer because they think that's the result. But then I would say, before you go down that path, go spend real time with real lawyers that are doing some of the things you think you want to do. See if you like what the day-to-day looks like.
Thank you all so much. This is so helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to mute now.
I would like to ask one question if I could, a general question. First and foremost, it's a privilege being here, hearing all these wonderful stories. They're so relatable and inspirational to me. And I'd just like to thank you all for sharing your stories, because you don't truly know how much it means to me. But a general question that's up for anybody to answer. How much of your work ethic changed during the transition from your undergraduate years to your law school years, or even, pre-law?
I'll go. I partied through college and I graduated with a 4.0. And I thought that I would go to law school and it would be the same. And it wasn't the same at all. Everybody in my law school class was wicked smart, and they were smart in many, many different ways. You would have people, like I said, who had entire careers where they had done just a whole life that I didn't have. And I remember sitting there the first week being like, I do not belong here. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. There's no way I could ever compete with all of this. And so, I had to put my head down. It was humbling. I had to study really hard. And I thought that law school stretched me beyond anything that I had ever experienced in my life. And then I started studying for the bar. And then the bar was its own other animal. And I sort of, I felt like this is it. This is the maximum that I could ever be pushed in my entire life. And then you start practicing law. And then that's its whole other thing. And nothing that you did in law school or the bar prepares you for that either. And so I feel like at every stage, your work ethic is constantly changing. At some points, you're working smarter and not necessarily harder. At some points, you're working harder because, it's just it's not about being smart. And so I feel like at every stage, it's a different challenge, but I feel like I had it in me to do all of those things. And I doubted myself every step of the way. But then when it really came time to it, it's actually inside you. So your work ethic and your sort of the way that you approach it is going to change over time. But I think that I truly believe that, like, if you're on track to graduate and you're going to graduate from college, you have it in you to succeed in law school and in a legal career. I think people tend to make it out to be a lot more than it actually is. And it's really not. And they make it into this like, oh, wow, like if you're doing it, it's something amazing and phenomenal. And, that first week I sat there and I heard people talking and I was like, oh my God, this is like so intimidating. And it's really not. So
I second that, like, times whatever, you could infinity maybe, right? That's maybe the biggest one. Okay. I say that because well, let me give this disclaimer. I tell people, don't be like me. Don't be like me. I didn't party through undergrad. I just didn't try that hard and made really good grades, right? Like, I just I don't know, natural intelligence. I'll just give it that. I didn't try that hard, but I will say this: if I had tried harder, I could have had. I didn't have a 4.0, like honey. Okay, I tried moderately and got A-, and I was like, oh, that's cool enough for me because I'm not doing anything big. So what I tell people is, try if you can. I'm not telling everyone to know your whole life story, but if you kind of know the path you want to be in. For example, Hania knew she was going to do big law. That takes a certain trajectory. I knew I was not doing big law. I'm not made for big law. I don't like to be on time for work. I don't like to work a lot of hours. I don't want a lot of billables. I don't like to do what people tell me to do. Period. So I knew big law was not for me. So I was never aiming for it. So for me, I was never, even in my childhood, that was never what my ideal of law was. So because of that, my goals for certain things, I was like, I don't have to have the 4.0. Right? I can get a 3.7, go, I can, and spend my time doing other things. So I did a lot of interning. I wanted practical experience. I wanted people to, I've had like 15,000 jobs because I wanted people to think that I could do something versus know something. So I had to pick which path, right? Like school teaches you to know stuff, but it doesn't teach you how to necessarily do stuff in the real world sometimes. So I was like, I want to have more practical experience. I care more about that. So I tell people, if it's possible, it's not always possible. Some of us just don't know what we want to do. We're just figuring it out. That's okay. But if you do kind of know your path, figure out what it takes to do your path. Big Law wasn't me. Didn't need a 4.0. Didn't need to have all the journals. I got on one, a smaller one. I didn't need to moot court. I got on mock trial because I like litigation more. So I just picked my path. So I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Same thing with law school. I worked hard enough. I graduated. I can't remember if it was with honors. I didn't go to my graduation because I was getting married the same weekend, and I cared about that more than going to my graduation because I was like, they still gonna give me my transcript. So, so a lot changed, but you can do it, and like I will echo what Hani has said. You can do it. It's in you. You just have to know what you want to do, and know where you want to strive. And if you know your lane, go for your lane because that'll help you reach your goal, not everybody else's goal, just yours. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and I completely concur. It was the same thing. We I think it was like a dinner before law school started where they said, "You're all A students, and now you're here together. So be prepared for that because you're not all going to be A students here." And so that was kind of I think a surprise for a lot of people. And I think undergrad is more like this now. But I mean, your law school grade is based on one thing that you do at the end. And if you mess that up, that's your grade. So, I mean, I think, undergrad is sort of like that too now and some things, but, it's not like you have these little questions or quizzes or, you go through the entire semester without, you could not go to class, you could go to class, you could, so you really need to buckle down. And, because I did the same thing. I had a lot of fun in undergrad. And, you get to law school and it's like, whoa, this book is big and I'm supposed to read it, and there's no scooting through some of that stuff. So I think the other thing too is, if you can find a good group of people that you can commit to study with and that you can partner with, you can ask questions to each other, and that you'll develop that bond over the 3 years you're in law school, so that they can help you, you can help them as you proceed. And then when you get a C in something, you go home and cry about it. If you're old enough, have a couple beers and go back at it. But you can definitely do it. But it is a different world. It's not the same as undergrad. It will feel different and it will be scary.
And you won't know the answer. Let me just add that. You will not know the answer, even though you think you will know. You would have read and be like, I got some answers today in class. And they will be like, and you might not even know whether you know the answer or not, because it's the Socratic method. So they just play these games with you. But yeah, everything's cheap.
I remember that from the bar too, that we were, I just wanted to get away from there. And then you walk out of the bar and they're like, oh my gosh, that criminal law question was so hard. And I'm like, criminal what? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm going, I didn't get a criminal law question. So it's the same way with the class too, is just sort of like, just do what you can, rise to the level and study what you can, but don't let other people pull you down. Find a group that will help to pull you up through the hard times.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate your answers.
Hi, I have a question, and it's more along the lines of someone who just took the bar and is waiting for results. What are your thoughts on the supervised licensure, and if somebody who's waiting on the results should attempt to get a job at a firm at this time, or maybe apply for more of a JD preferred position?
I guess I'll start. I mean, I think you should be looking for a job immediately. And I would look for a job that you want, something that you want to be doing, whatever that is. I don't think they usually hesitate. I haven't had anybody hesitate about hiring somebody who hasn't passed the bar if they have the right capabilities, because they could still do a great job, even if you have to take it again. I think that's what a lot of lawyers or a lot of hirers feel like is, unless you're going for a job that needs 10 years experience, then that's not going to work for you. But if they're hiring new lawyers and you haven't passed the bar, I would just explain that in your in the interview process. But I would be looking now for sure for whatever you want to do, if you know what that is.
I would echo, but I think it depends on what you want to do and what path you've taken. Like for me, I would, I went to a big school. Well, I graduated from a big school, right? So I've gotten so many opportunities because people are like, oh, you went to Emory, you know what you're doing. Like I'm an adjunct professor right now at community college. I did that after being practicing for like 6 months. I was like, how is it that you're letting me teach people? And they're like, oh, well, you have the academic credentials, right? So some people might, like she said, if you have these other things, say, oh, okay, it's all right. Because with COVID, things are kind of funky. And I don't know how firms are going to feel about certain things, right? But I also say there's nothing wrong with applying for JD Preferred. Like, you need a job. I wouldn't limit your search, but try to find something that you actually want to do. But at the same time, it depends on your situation, right? If you're just looking for something, because we don't know how employers are feeling about what's happening with COVID. We don't, you know what I mean? And with all the rule changes about the bar and what that means, and any of the implications, like for people, you know what I mean? So I would say apply everywhere. Why not? If they'll take it and then, they'll give you interviews and stuff, why you might as well apply and use your network. Find out what employers are saying. You have people at firms see, hey, what is your firm doing? You know what I mean? Networking is going to be your best friend in finding jobs and all of that. Networking is going to be a good resource because you'll find out what's going on.
I'll just chime in because I kind of assist with recruiting. So typically, first of all, I want to say I just want to apologize because that was an awful experience and you shouldn't have had to take the bar in a pandemic online in a weird format that nobody's ever done it in. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But having said that, every time the recruiting process, at least for big law firms, is that they will hire students right after the bar. So we always get admission pending students. And so the bar, I think, is typically in July, and our start date is in October or September, sometimes even August. And then, the bar results come out in November. So all our new grads are unlicensed. And so we do have a supervised program. They formalized it now, but it's always been happening. And so I think I would apply if you want to go to a law firm, I would apply to a law firm. They're hiring. Our new class is starting in January, which is before bar results come out. The bar has said TBD essentially. And so we're hiring them on a supervised licensure basis or whatever it's being called because of COVID. We would have hired them. They would have started right after they took the bar in August or September or whenever it was supposed to be anyway. So I would definitely apply if that's what you want to do and you intend to go to a law firm.
And what's your thought too, if you hire somebody, you're working with them, the supervising attorney thinks they're great, they're really a good fit for, not everybody fits this picture, but that happens and they get the results and they fail. Do you just immediately fire them, or what's the?
No, you get a couple tries. At least my firm has a policy. We've had new grads who have failed in the past. And we only let someone go if it's, a couple of tries. And even still, we recently let somebody go because that individual failed, a couple times. And we let them go saying, if you pass, like, we loved working with you. She was wicked smart and just really, really talented, and she was getting stuff done. And so when she passes, we're going to push her resume in again and sort of see if we can get her back. So it's not like you fail and then that's it and it's over.
Thank you.
Actually, I have one more question that's relevant to the current pandemic we're going through. So, to give you just a slight bit of background information, I'm an aspiring law school student planning to be enrolled by next year, next fall. But the way things are going, it looks as though that law school for the first time, if I'm correct, might be online for a majority of the students, if not all of them. So do you think with that possibility being out there and in existence, do you think that have a big impact on new law school students, or do you think that things are just too unpredictable to predict right now?
I think that's something you're going to have to tell us. You'll have to do this in 5 years and tell people about it. Because, and I think, just like Rebecca had said too, life keeps going when you're in law school, and hopefully the pandemic doesn't keep going. But if so I think you need to weigh that. Do you have the luxury ability to wait a year? Does that make sense for you? That's fine. But a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of us have been able to get through the pandemic. We have our calls on Zoom. You're going to have to work harder to meet that group of friends that you commit to meet with on a regular basis, because it's not going to happen, with a beer in the lounge on Thursday nights. You're going to have to commit to meeting with these groups on Zoom or whatever is safe for you. And at a time you would be going to class, will you be sleeping through the Zoom meetings? Will you be able to pay attention to those things? You've got to be able to commit to doing things a different way. And then I'm sure, I have utmost confidence in all of you that you could do it. But if that doesn't make sense to you and it doesn't feel like it's going to be the right time for you, then give yourself a year. But anyway, like I said, we have no idea. I mean, I'm trying to figure out like day to day here.
I'll just add to that. I agree with everything Tara said. But I'll just add, I think if you're starting fall next year, I'm hoping things will be fine by then. So, hopefully, you're not even going to be in an online situation. But even if you are, the thing that I would note is that if you are determined, if you really want to be a lawyer and you want to practice law, we're all in Zoom court right now. I haven't been in a courtroom since March. I haven't been in a physical deposition since March. Our criminal cases are going forward in person, but a lot of the civil hearings are online. Trials are being pushed. And so it's not necessarily, just limited to law school. I think if truly everything is going to be online, then I think the nature of the legal profession is going to shift as well and change. And I think even after we have a vaccine and things go back to quote unquote normal, I mean, I don't think I'm going to be flying out to Texas for a deposition anytime soon if we can do it virtually. I don't think anyone is going to pay for that going forward. So a lot of things are going to happen online. And I think that that's just the future of the landscape. So.
Thank you so much.
Tara, you said something about law school, and I really like when you said in people's mind, they always think they have to go to the top law schools. They think I just have to go. But I've told students in where I teach in New York City. I said, go to CUNY Law School. And one student listened to me. He's practicing, he's prospering. So what would you recommend students do? What kind of research would you recommend they do on the law, picking a law school?
Yeah, and I don't know that I did exactly the right thing at the time, but one thing that I knew, like, again, I had a child, I had financial support, so I knew I didn't necessarily have to stay in Orange County, but I knew moving to New York City was not going to work for me. Being 3,000 miles away from a family member was not going to work. And then I went to San Francisco a few times, and that whole town felt right to me. That community felt like the place for me. And then I heard some stories around UCSF and some, I guess there's stories when Honya and Rebecca and I were talking. There are all these rumors about how brutal other schools are, to each other, and people are mean to each other. I don't even know if they use pages anymore, but back when I was there, people would rip out the pages of the book in the library, so you couldn't get the answers. Like, that's how brutal students were to each other. And again, we were telling that story about other schools. So I don't know if we're just sort of making that up, but I took tours of places I wanted to go. And the two places at the top of my list were Berkeley, which was like, you're probably not getting in there kind of a school for me. And then University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit school up there. And I went to that school and just made great connections with people. I was able to talk to a few current students, a few teachers, and it really felt like a good school for me. It's very hard though, because any school you go to, they're all going to tell you how amazing they are, and then how bad, maybe how bad this other school was. But that's sort of, I think, and now people do that with undergrad. But when I went to undergrad, you didn't go on tours to pick your undergrad. You determined how far away from your parents or whatever, your situation was. And you pick those schools in that area. But now people go on all those tours. But I think for law school, you really do need to feel like you have a good fit there. And I don't know, it's sort of difficult to say, but I would talk to former students. If I could go back in time, I would talk to people who graduated from that school. I would talk to people who go there now. I would try to talk to a professor. And if that's really hard, that might be a hint to you. Mm. And I'm not saying one professor, but if you reach out to a few and none of them will get back to you, then it's sort of like, how are you going to treat me when I'm there? But anyway, so I think kind of doing that, and it goes back to what Rebecca, networking. Anything you can do to network starting now and going until the day you die is going to be so important to you. I worked for St. Joseph Health System for a long time, but I worked there almost 10 years. And then I was laid off. Like, what? I thought I was going to work there till I died. I had just helped a psychologist write a book about something about Mondays, like what it means to have a great job. Maybe a month before this, I had done an interview with her about how much I loved my job and how I planned to work there forever. And then I'm laid off for no reason. They were just cutting back on people. And that was just like a huge smack in my face. I had never networked. I had never lunch. I don't go to lunch. I sit at my desk and I eat my lunch while I'm working. And so when that happened, the next day I went and they had set us up with people I forgot what they're called, but they help you get new jobs. But anyway, so I met with her and she was like, network. And she connected me with people, and I'm going to lunch, I'm having coffee. And then I decided to start my own practice. And I loved it. And networking can be hard, but it'll get you so far. So just a little more history. So I went back to St. Joseph for another almost 10 years. And then now I started my own practice again. I just, with my network, I have a lot of colleagues that are the general counsels of hospitals. And that's the work I do. And they will hire me. And so, it was a great opportunity for me to leave and start my own practice. But to think I went through those 10 years and never went to dinner with any of my, events with professors or other colleagues or like the Thurgood Marshall Bar Association. I mean, you've got to grab on to any of those things and connect with people as much as you can. And that's the same thing about a new law school is try to make connections and find a place that feels good to you.
I think I'll just echo that as well. I feel like when I decided to go to UCI, it was still unranked. And so when people say like top law school and like not top law school, it's in reference to what's called the US News rankings predominantly. I bet there are other rankings, but I think in general, they're referencing the US News rankings. And so it's just a company or entity that goes out and it'll look at different factors in a law school and then it'll rank them. And so there are employers who will only hire from like the top 10 on that list or the top 20 on that list or the top 50 on that list. And when I went to UCI, it wasn't even ranked at all. So it wasn't even 500. It was just an unranked school. And so for me, I was confident that it would end up somewhere on that ranking that I would be comfortable, but I was fully okay with being at a school that was far down in the bottom too. And the difference or the deciding factor for me was how I felt when I interacted with people in that law school. And just like Tara said, if you're reaching out to a professor and they're not responding, that's a big red flag. I would not go there. But the number of professors that responded to me that, did Skype calls with me, figuring out my time zone when I was in Cyprus and just sat and wanted to talk to me about their scholarship in a way that wasn't condescending, where I would ask questions and they would act like it was the most brilliant question they'd ever heard, even though it was probably very, very dumb. Or the students that, took time out of their schedules to meet with me via Skype, or alumni who, I was Skyping with them and they were in their office. And so, it just, the entire sort of culture of the law school came through for me. And I truly, when I say this, I mean it in the most earnest way. Like, I do not think that I could have succeeded as a law student and now as an attorney without having that support. I have met the best people in my life in law school, my very, very best friends, the most amazing colleagues. We still see each other in court. We serve on boards and organizations together. We put up charity events together. We network. And every time we see each other, it's a big hug and I've missed you. And where have you been? It's like never there. I can think of 2 people in my class that I didn't like. It was just a very collegial atmosphere. And for me, that was what helped me succeed and become an attorney, not the fact that it was ranked any number or anything like that. And I know that if I lost my job tomorrow, I have a whole tribe of people who, they might not be able to get me another job, but they will do their best. And I think that that's really what's important at the end of the day, not, what number you fall on this like arbitrary ranking. So.
Thank you. And we have questions. Let me see. Baldwin, it says, are referrals still the best way to find a lawyer? Or are there new online directories or other resources? I'm seeking an estate attorney in Texas. That's S. Baldwin. I don't know your first name. That's why I said Baldwin. Sorry.
Professor Alexis, can I jump in?
Yes.
The question right before that, it just kind of ties into what they just answered. It's any advice for networking. I'm not sure if you'd like to touch on that first and then follow up with the next question.
Yeah, so on networking, the way I've handled it over the years, and this was thanks to the guidance I received from Sandy, who helped me back in the day, is one is I never ask for a job or ask them to hire me, or hire my law firm. I ask them to lunch. I ask them to coffee. I tell them that I want to learn more about what they do and tell them more about my history. So it's not about that. If you send an email to somebody and say, I'm looking for a job. Oh, sorry, I don't have one. That conversation ends, So you want to get to know them, have them know you. And then when a job comes up in 5 years or 2 years or next week or somebody down the way, I just met somebody. She's great for this. I'll pat myself on the back, I guess, but I've gotten 6 or 7 people jobs because of that. Because I say, somebody just reached out to me. She's looking to get in and such, and it's worked out. And they were hired. And that's the same way with me getting clients is I try to figure out the email address of places because with my work, I'm looking for like the general counsel of companies. So I try to maneuver my way to figure out the email address. And then this is before COVID. So, and I'll go back to this again, but then I ask them out I'll even say like, oh, I'll be in San Diego next Thursday. Would you like to have some coffee? And, oh, sure, that's perfect. If you say, oh, I'll travel. Oh, no, don't travel. But, so just drive down there for coffee. They don't need to know that. But the whole point is just to like get to know. And again, I know everybody sort of wants a job or they want this at the end of the day, but the best part of it is getting to know new people and getting to know their background and getting to know, how they got in their position. Tell them about yourself and you make great connections with people. The other thing I'll say is I have never had anybody say, hey, jerk, stop emailing me. No one has ever said that. Some people don't reply. Some people say, oh, I don't have a job. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't ask for a job. But nobody has ever said anything negative to me. Now, they might say something that I can't account for everybody in the world, but I will say that it's not the common practice to say, what? If they're not interested, they just won't respond. And so no big deal. And you send out 20 of those emails, you get 2 coffees, then you can be really excited about that. That's sort of how I play the networking game and now with my own practice. But since I learned 10 years into my practice, but I wish I would have done this in undergrad. I wish I would have done this in law school. I wish I would have done this for, even in high school, I wish I would have done this. But anyway, hopefully some of you will start doing it sooner than I did.
So I'll just agree with everything that's been said, and the rule sort of thumb that my partner gave me, I don't know if it's a general rule, if that's just her personal rule. She said, you have to have met with someone 7 times before you make an ask. And her thing was maybe a little bit different from what Tara said, because she said you ultimately have to make an ask. You have to ask for a job. You have to ask for, work, but you shouldn't be doing that the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, until the 7th time, you've had coffee, dinner, lunch with someone before you can say something like, keep me in mind next time you have an opportunity or whatever. And there's also a way that you say it where it's not, I want a job and I need it now. But I think in terms of networking tips, as an undergrad and in law school, because you're not necessarily going to be going to people asking them for jobs, the thing that I would keep in mind is I'm not a natural networker. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm the kind of person that if I'm in a room, in law school and in undergrad, a lot of the networking opportunities are conferences or mixers or some kind of gathering. I'm not the person that naturally gravitates and is a social butterfly and is just, talking to everybody and exchanging information. And so it's something that I definitely had to work at. But I think also as a person of color, as a Black woman in a predominantly white profession, it's also something where I decided very early on that it had to be fully comfortable and authentic. And it's not something where I'm willing to stand around a group of guys talking about sports for, 2 hours. It's just not interesting to me. It's not authentic, and I don't enjoy it, and I'm just not going to do it. So I try and find people in the room that I have common interests with, or something that is shared. And I'm the kind of person that I will probably talk to one person maybe the whole night and exchange information and take that one contact and follow up and sort of build that relationship. But I'm not necessarily talking to 50 people or getting like 50 sort of email addresses. And then the other sort of networking tip that I would give is keep in touch, because, we're going to leave this seminar, this meeting right now, and I guarantee you maybe 2 people will reach out to me, or 3 people will reach out to me. And then, we'll exchange something. Maybe I'll get coffee with one person and I'll never hear from anybody again. But it really is a game where, like, if somebody says, contact me, contact that person and be persistent, because you're not necessarily going to be on their radar. So yes, you have coffee, follow up a couple of weeks later, ask them out to lunch, follow up a couple of weeks later. And it takes time for people to even get to know you. And so you can't just, send one email and then get one coffee and then, forget it and put that in your Rolodex and think that you've made a connection. It doesn't work that way. You really have to be consistent with following up with people and keeping in touch. And then the last thing that I'll say is, if you're ever in a situation where you're networking with somebody and it's uncomfortable, or especially for like young women in the profession, just end it. It's not worth it. And there's just so many opportunities out there that you don't have to be in any situation that makes you uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. That's not networking. So.
Thank you so much, ladies. We do have a couple more questions in the chat from S. Baldwin. It's the one that Professor Alexis previously read. The question is, are referrals still the best way to find a lawyer, or are there new online directories or other resources? I'm seeking an estate attorney in Texas.
So I would prefer, when I look for lawyers, because I don't practice every kind of law, I prefer a referral. There are directories, but I wouldn't trust them. I would rather know somebody knows the person or use them for a service and felt good about what they did than go off of some sort of a directory. And also, if you hire a lawyer and you're uncomfortable, you don't feel like they know what they're talking about, or they sound like they know too much, I would just back away and find a different lawyer too. So, but I don't, do you know any like director?
Referrals. Referrals. I would not use a directory. I strongly do not go on Yelp, do not go on Craigslist, fully get a referral. Do not do any of those things.
We have another question from S. Baldwin as well. It says, does anyone on the panel have plans to study a different area of law, or are you committed to your current practice?
Well, I think Honya does every area of law from what I could see, but I do healthcare. I actually do some more specific work around clinical research, and I am happy there. And it would not make sense to me after 20 years of this to go into anything else. So I enjoy it. The issue for me with healthcare is it's extremely broad. There's a patient issue in the hospital. There's a contract. They're buying a building. They're starting a surgery center. They're closing a hospital. There's a pandemic. So healthcare law has never been boring, and it felt like a narrow focus, but I'm definitely not going to be a criminal lawyer or start going to court ever. So
I'm a general practitioner, which, like I said, sort of means that I have my hand in many jars, but you can't do that for very long. So I'm a new attorney. I'm now starting my 4th year in practice, and very soon I will have to pick a lane. It's very hard to advance as a general practitioner.
Is there a lane that you're thinking about?
I am. I like our sort of government work. So that is criminal law, regulatory work, investigations. We have a lot of healthcare cases. I find it interesting. The fact patterns are always fun. It's fun kind of going up against the government. There's some components of it. So our indictment cases take us to court, but in general, if you're doing an investigation or you're advising on a regulatory issue or doing compliance work, you're not really in court that much. I enjoy it. If I had to pick today, that's what I do. But because of the pandemic, our bankruptcy practice is heating up. We're having a lot of business bankruptcies. We've had more filings to date than we've had in the past 5 years or something. So that's been interesting, sort of looking at that. And there's investigations relating to that as well, because, when things go poorly, people start asking questions. And so that's also been very interesting. So I don't really know which way I'd go, but I would, to answer the question, yes, you do, I think, have to narrow your focus if you want to advance ultimately, because you have to start developing clients, you have to start making a name for yourself. You have to start establishing sort of, this is what I do. But I'm not at that point yet because I'm still a new attorney. So
we do have a private question that came in. It says, I am a mom of 2, 11, and 7 months, and I am in a full-time employed position. I graduated in 2012. What advice do you have for me to help me begin preparing for the LSAT and applying to law school?
I would just say, I think we sort of mentioned this towards the beginning, is just, make sure you're ready for what you're in for. I mean, when I went to law school with a young child, she had to play by herself a lot, and she was very comfortable with that. I had to, this was back in the day. So, I had to tape myself, all my notes late at night. I would tape them, and then I would listen to them all the time. So I would be taking my daughter somewhere, and I would be cooking dinner, and I would doing the laundry, and I'm listening and listening and listening and listening. And I'm sure there are better electronic ways to handle that now. But, not Disneyland, but I would take her to the museum, and I would have in one ear, criminal law course blasting in my ear, and you don't learn everything from that. That can't be the only way that you learn, but you learn to try to, pepper in your education any way that you can. And during finals week was, it's going to depend on what your children can handle. But I know, my daughter, there's no talking during finals week. If you need to talk to me, you come and stand. And she was 3 to 5. So she wasn't a teenager. I said, you stand in the doorway and wait for me. Just wait. Because if you interrupt what is happening in your brain, it just all falls apart. And she did that. And then at the end of that week, it was whatever you want. We go to ice cream, we'll go to Disneyland, whatever needs to happen. Thank you for doing that. And so, that's what I had to do because I was by myself. If you have other people that can kind of fill in, maybe finals week is a week they spend with grandma, and you can be in that space by yourself. But you've got to figure out, I think that's the other thing too about picking a school is, can you be in a school that's close to people that can help you? Because you will need help. I'll
just add to that. I don't have a kid, but I think that motherhood and the legal profession is definitely something that's, there's a lot of attention on it right now because it is an added burden for female attorneys. And I went to school with a lot of moms, and I went to school with single moms. And, Tara's kids are great because, they were quiet, but I had, classmates that we would go over to their homes during finals week, and it was just absolute chaos. The kids were just running around in circles, just screaming. And, the mom's just there studying, and it's just white noise. And I'm I do not know how you do this. I cannot do this. I had friends who gave birth during finals week. I had a friend who had her 3-month-old son had open heart surgery during finals week, which was just, and she had 5 children, which was, I don't know, she just didn't sleep. It's doable, and you'll do it, and you'll be great. But the question is, do you want to do it, and why are you going to law school? Because for all of those people, like she said, there are going to be a lot of times when your kids are going to have to play alone. And I think, it has to be something that you really want to do. You're passionate about being an attorney for whatever reason, because you're going to make money, or because you're passionate about the law, or whatever the goal is, has to be in the fore of your mind, because it's a lot of work. It was a lot of work for me as a young, 20-something person without any kids. But the other thing that I will say is that it's going to be difficult now. My husband and I are trying to start a family. It's difficult doing that and having a job too, because, you're thinking about, well, what's the impact of this in my career? How am I going to balance having a young child and working, 10, 12 hours a day or whatever it is? That's going to be true whether you had a kid before you went to law school, or if you decide to have a kid later when you're, in practice. It's just an unfair burden on women. And, that's just what it is. So there's no right answer.
We have a couple more questions in the chat. One of them says, which year of law school is the hardest? What is the biggest challenge that year? And what did you learn from that year?
You want to go ahead?
First year is the hardest. So the way that law school is, you start your first year, and for a lot of people, it depends on your trajectory and what you intend to do. But for a lot of people, your first semester grades are the grades that you use to apply for the job that you have in your first summer. And then your first year grades are the grades that you use in your first summer to apply for the job that you do in your second summer. So that first sort of semester is really like, you have to hit the ground running. And for someone like me, I hadn't gone to school in the US, prior to going to law school. And even if I had, it's it's difficult, and it's new stuff, and it's hard stuff. And it's a lot of studying. It's a lot of reading case law in old archaic language that I didn't understand. And, the professor will never tell you the answer. They'll just keep asking you random questions because that's the method. They don't teach. So it's not like there's a professor there teaching you, here's the situation. They'll just keep asking you questions like, why do you think this is? What did you think the judge was thinking when they did this? And that's essentially how they teach. And there's nothing in that class or semester to let you know how you're doing, because there are no tests. And so you're just in this classroom, you're reading all this material, and someone's asking you a bunch of questions. And then at the end, there's an exam that often has nothing to do with anything you learned the whole semester. And that's what you're graded. It's like a 4-hour exam. It's open book, so you can reference any materials you want, but it won't matter because no one knows the answer. So knowing that going in, I kind of got comfortable. There was a book that was recommended reading for new students, which I realized half my class didn't read. And the name of the book was Getting to Maybe. And the whole premise of the book was people come into law school thinking the answer is yes or no. And the only way to truly excel in law school is to be comfortable with the idea of maybe, and it depends, and yes if, and no but. And that really, really sort of got me very, very comfortable. The thing that I learned in my first year of law school, the overarching thing, is that I'm capable of way more than I give myself credit for. Because I started off, and that first week I was like, I don't even know what is going on. I read my first case and I was like, I do not know what I just read for the past hour. But then you learn very quickly that you have a very steep learning curve, and that you can actually pick things up very quickly, and that, you might not be the person that's spouting off all the answers in class, but you might know one or two things. And so I also gained confidence because I was very, very shy. I wouldn't project my voice. I wouldn't speak up. Professors would ask me things and they couldn't hear me. And by my second semester, I was like, I was a little parrot. So.
Yeah, just real quick, same thing, because the first year they tell you what every class, this is what you're doing. And that's what you do. The whole first year they tell you. And I'll just because I think Rebecca may have left, which I wouldn't blame her for. But I think we disagreed on this. Some advice I got before I got to law school is take everything that's on the bar. If it's on the bar, take that class. Who cares if you want to be a sports lawyer? Who cares if you want to do intellectual property? If it's on the bar, take that class. Rebecca, I believe, and I'm speaking for her, so sorry if I'm wrong, she went to school in a different state. So what good did it do for her to take property law or remedies in that state when the remedies in California on the California bar are different? So, think about that. But if you are going to take the bar in the same state that you're going to law school, I think I felt like it was a good position to take what was on the bar, regardless of what you want to do with your life. But most people enjoy second and third year because I'm interested in this, and this sounds kind of fun, and I like that teacher, but the first year is like, what? Just shocking. But you can do it. We did it. I'm nothing special. I did it. You can do it.
I'll just add to that. So I got that advice. Don't take anything on the bar. Enjoy, because the first year you have a set curriculum. They'll tell you the classes that you're taking, mandatory for every lawyer to take. You need to know torts, you need to know contracts, you need to know constitutional law, evidence. Well, evidence isn't required. But yeah, there's a set number of classes that you need to take. And then you go into your second year and third year and you can take whatever you want. And I went in to do my counseling and sort of get my second year classes. And they were like, don't take any bar classes. You learn them for the bar. There's a bar review course. You don't need to, take any classes. Just, do whatever you want. And then I did. I took film in the law. I took women in the law. I took trial ad. I took a lot of classes that, were just a lot of fun, things I was interested in. I took, antitrust law, which I knew I'd never practice. And then I started studying for the bar, and I realized that there were 12 subjects that I had no training in, and I had to learn each of them in 3 days. And I just sat there that first day and I cried, and I was like, this is horrible. And so I strongly recommend taking bar classes. And I'm not saying take every bar class or don't take anything you're interested in, but some of the foundational ones, I really like. If I could go back, it would have made bar prep significantly easier if I had remedies or First Amendment or admin law, or even some of these classes, or any number combinations to just reduce what I had to study for the bar. So I fully recommend that you take bar classes.
And we have one more question in the chat if you want to answer this one. How many months are recommended for studying the bar?
I'll take this one, no more than 3, because you forget it. It's your short-term memory that you use.
I blocked it out. I have no idea. The thought of taking another bar exam is just not happening for me. So I just helped a woman who is I served in an interim role for a hospital because she took time off after 10 or 15 years to take the California bar because she had moved here. I was like, good for you. But I would not, I don't want to move. If I move, I'm not taking the bar from another state. I was traumatized, but I passed and we move on,
They say 3 months because I think the idea is that if you spend more time, you start forgetting things. It's a test of memorization. I would have liked a couple more weeks. So I think if you feel like you might need a couple more weeks, I would add like maybe 2 or 3 weeks on that. But my understanding of it, and I'm not like a bar, like this is just what I was told, because I was infuriated when I like opened bar materials and I was like, this is so much stuff. Like, how do you expect me to learn this? Why didn't we do this in law school that we paid for? And they said, well, it's short-term memory and you have to memorize. And then after, it's like a thing. So then the more you study, like the way it goes down, I guess. So I don't know. They say 3 months.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was wonderful. Were there any other questions? I don't think so. Was there anything that you would like to conclude with before we wrap up the meeting this evening?
I think for me, I'm grateful and so happy that that you guys let us join you and be a part of this. I think, I had reached out. I really want to help and do more. And so, I'm hoping we gave some good guidance to you guys. I know at least one of you, I think Ms. Baldwin, has reached out to me already on LinkedIn. Do that. Please make us part of your network. We would love that. And look forward to coffee with you all when I can leave my COVID home someday. So thank you all.
I'd say exactly that. It's really lovely, and it's such an honor and a privilege to talk to you guys. And I feel like I really benefited from these programs when I was in law school, because not undergrad. I didn't have these programs in undergrad, and so I didn't reach out to people. I think like if I could go back, that's something I'd do differently. Definitely reach out, and then hopefully we can get coffee when things open up. And if you're considering a legal career, I will say I would think about it and make sure that it's right for you. But I can tell you that it has honestly been one of the most rewarding, amazing experiences for me. I love the practice of law. I can't imagine doing anything else. If I were doing anything else, I'd probably, be using my legal skills to do another thing, but it would be in the same sort of space. And so, I really hope that if it's right for you, it's something that you do and pursue, and it's definitely attainable. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Oh, wow. It's beyond anything I thought. It's just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank everyone.
Yeah, Sydney, did you have anything else before we wrap up completely?
No, I just wanted to thank the panelists for joining us. This was really excellent. Thank you for everyone who attended. I did not intend on going to law school prior to this meeting, but now with all this new information, I have something else to look at. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, as we wrap up, thank you so much to our panelists, Rebecca, Hania, Tara. Thank you, Sydney and Gwen, for helping moderate tonight. Tonight's event was brought to you by the Cal State Fullerton Black Alumni Network. It has been recorded and hopefully will be up on our YouTube channel here in the next week or so. Speaking of YouTube, we do have our other programs, some of our other recent programs posted up there. We just did a voter education series. So if you have not filled out your California ballot, there's an entire session on the propositions, walking you through the pros and cons, what they mean, all of that sort of stuff. So you can definitely check that out. We're also always looking for new hosts. We have a Cooking with a Titan YouTube series or a Titan Alumni Talk podcast. If you have a family recipe you want to share, or know someone who does, or a really great personal story, we'd love to be able to feature you there. With that, though, thank you all so much for coming tonight. It was great to see such a robust group here and to have all the questions answered. I know I learned a lot, even though I left my dreams of going to law school back in high school when I did mock trial and decided it was not for me. But yes, thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.